Hello and welcome back to another learning lab. We are still looking at ways to support and guide learners in the clubs, and we are still also exploring ways to create a supportive learning environment. This is part 3. In this learning lab, we are looking specifically at positive communication. As always, we are looking at developing the growth pillars, and in this lab we're developing pillars 2, 3 and 4. So facilitation of learning in clubs. We're also looking at skills that you might be able to use in the workplace if you were to move beyond TIMCA at some point in the future, and of course skills that promote a positive mindset. So in this session, we are going to look briefly at the different parts of communication. We're going to explore the difference between positive and negative communication and the effects of positive and negative communication on people. And then obviously always how these ideas can be used in your clubs with the children that you work with. So remember, I just want to remind you that we are still exploring creating supportive learning environments in the clubs. So these are the spaces that we're trying to create where children feel safe and supported in their pursuit of learning. We've looked at that it includes the vibe, the ground rules, the attitudes towards other people in the space, how we behave in that space. And then today we're looking at how we communicate with other people in those spaces. If you want to follow along in your notes, we are looking at page 1 of 5. So communication is not just about the words that we use. Yes, a small part of communication is verbal. What we say, what we write, our spoken and written words. But most of our communication is non-verbal. So we're going to look at what non-verbal communication is. Most experts, people who have researched communication, agree that between 70 to 93% of all communication is non-verbal. So that means that everything that we say, the words that we use, is only about 7% of how we communicate to others. So this is really important that we know what the non-verbal aspects of communication are. So non-verbal communication includes the gestures we make. So these are the things that we do with our hands. You know, we might point a finger, we might shake hands with people, we might wave, we might do a thumbs up, we might do a fist pump, we might do a high five. Those are all things that we do with our hands to communicate. What do we do with our faces, our facial expressions? So we might frown, we might wink, we might smile, we might cry. Those are things that show communication skills through our face. Then we turn to the rest of our body, and how does that communicate, and our posture. So in other words, the way that we stand, the way that we sit, and the way that we arrange our bodies. So, you know, we can slouch over, we can stand straight, we can cross our arms, we can shrug. There's all sorts of ways that we can communicate with our bodies. Our tone of voice, the way that our voice comes out, is part of our non-verbal communication as well. So is that voice soft, gentle? Is it loud? Is it threatening? Is it frightening? And the final aspect of non-verbal communication is eye contact. So how do we look at other people in the eye when we are communicating with them, and more specifically when we're talking to them. So being aware of the non-verbal communication, which is a large part of how we communicate with others, will help us to communicate in a more complete way. Okay, so it's not just about the words we use, it's about everything that we use to put forward a message. So we've got two types of communication that sort of have a different effect on the people that we interact with. So positive, or sometimes called open communication, is more informative, it's more proactive, it helps people to take action, it's more helpful. It sends clear messages, not confusing messages. And it helps encourage a positive mindset. So for us, when we're working with the children, it encourages a growth mindset. And it also improves our overall well-being. So it makes us feel better about where we are and what we're doing. So that's very interesting. Negative communication, sometimes called closed communication, can be fairly limited. It doesn't give us much information, it's unhelpful, and very often it's critical and judgmental. Negative words, goodness me, so can't, won't, don't, shouldn't, not, avoid, never. These are words that can be considered to be negative. And we often think, say, and do things using negative communication, often involving those words. It can be filled with negative words and other non-verbal communication. So it's not just about using the words, it's about what our bodies, our hands, our faces are also saying at the same time. Negative communication like this can affect how we think about ourselves, how we look at life, and how we behave. And it also, interestingly, influences the relationship we have with the person who uses that language. So if we are always with someone who uses negative communication or negative language, it will affect the type of relationship that we have with them. How do we interact with them? How do we feel when we're with those people? What do we think that we can and cannot do when we're with those types of people? So what I'm wanting you to think about here is you have a relationship with the children in your clubs. How do they relate to you and the way that you communicate with them? So this is what we're trying to unpack here. So when we use these negative words, they can be very critical. And no one wants to be criticized all the time. So quite often we say, stop doing that. You're doing it wrong. You can't do that. So there's the word can't, there's the word stop, there's the word wrong. These are all sort of critical judgments that we often say just because we say them. They're part of, how we've been brought up. But these things can make us feel disheartened, they can make us feel frustrated, they can make us feel confused. Because they don't give us any information. They just say, stop. You're doing it wrong. You can't do that. So, okay, what should I be doing instead? Or how should I be doing it? Okay, so you can see this negative communication doesn't particularly give us any information, doesn't give us a way forward. It's not always very helpful. Okay, if you want to follow along in your notes, we're now looking at page 2 of 5. So let's just unpack this, the difference between negative and positive communication. And at the moment, we're looking at just at the verbal aspect, so the things that we say, but quite a lot of this can also apply to the non-verbal, the stuff that we do with our bodies. So negative verbal communication is indirect. It's not a clear message. It draws attention to what we shouldn't do. So stop doing that. Okay, so that's we saying, don't do that, rather than I want you to do something else. Okay, so it draws attention to what we shouldn't be doing. It doesn't give any options. It's fairly limited or limiting. It can be critical, judgmental. It can make us feel ashamed, embarrassed, and it can also be very discouraging, so that we actually don't want to continue. What about positive verbal communication? Well, if we get it right, it's more direct. It sends a very clear message. And what we want it to do is to draw attention to what we should be doing, what we want people to be doing. And if you think back to a previous learning lab, drawing attention to what we value. Positive verbal communication can give people choices and alternatives. It's more helpful, it's more reassuring, it's more supportive, it's kinder. And obviously then it's more encouraging. Let's have a look at some examples. So we're going to look at some very common things that we all say every day. And these are the types of things that we say with negative words, which could, have a negative effect on how we think about ourselves and about our lives. I'm not stressed. I'm not stressed. So you're saying, okay, I'm not stressed. It's a negative word. We might say to somebody, to a child, don't be so rough. Or somebody asks, how are you doing? Oh, I can't complain. I can't complain. Someone might ask us to do something. We say, no problem, but there's a negative word in there, the word no. Somebody again asks us, how are we doing? I'm not bad. There's the word not in there again. How are you doing? I've been worse. Okay, so there's a lot of negative words sprinkled into those examples of everyday things that we say. Let's see if we can turn them around a bit. What can we say instead? So instead of saying, I'm not stressed, I could say, oh, I've been really relaxed recently. That just makes me feel more relaxed, even just saying it. I've been more relaxed recently. Oh, that feels better. Instead of saying to someone, don't be so rough, we could say to a child, be gentle. Be more gentle. They know exactly what you want them to do then. You want them to be gentle. Instead of saying, I can't complain, we could say, things are going really well for me. Thank you. I'm not complaining. I'm actually giving a very positive piece of feedback when somebody says, how are you? Things are going really well for me. Thank you. If someone asks you to do something, instead of saying, no problem, you can say, of course. More welcoming, more encouraging. Instead of saying, I'm not bad, you could say, I'm good. In fact, I'm good. I'm great. And instead of saying, I've been worse, I'm doing great. Okay, so you can see that instead of focusing on the negative aspects or using negative language types of words, we can actually say things in a positive way. And when I want you to say these things to yourself and to see how you feel when you say them. Because just saying them now to you has made me feel more relaxed by using the positive words. Let's have another look at a detailed example. So you might say to a child, this is a really common example, don't forget to bring your book to club next week. So first of all, it starts with a don't. Okay, so there's a negative word. The next word is forget. So any child who's listening to you starts with a negative word and then it says forget. So you're kind of sending a message to the child, or you're drawing attention to this word, forgetting. All right. So the message is not really clear because it's not telling the child very clearly what you want the behavior to be. So let's talk about it sending a clearer message or being more direct. Remember to bring your book to club next week. It's straight there. Remember to bring your book. There's no don't, there's no forget. Remember. That's the clear message. All right, if you want to follow along in your notes, we're now on page 3 of 5. So if you are thinking about your club and we're thinking about using positive communication in your club, you are showing the children what positive language and behavior looks like. You're showing them what it sounds like, and you're showing them what it feels like. We're going to look at those examples a bit more in a moment. So, positive communication encourages children to learn from the positive behaviors that you are modeling in the club. You are showing them things so they can copy you because it's a positive thing to copy you. So instead of focusing on the negative ones that they might come across in other places, like home, the classroom, etc., you've got an opportunity here to show them what positive behaviors and positive communication looks like. So, what does it look like to communicate positively? It looks like being kind and helping others. So that's a kind of a behavior. You can see people being kind. You can see them helping. It also looks like having open body language and open, welcoming facial expressions. It also looks like making eye contact, looking at people in the eye when you're speaking to them. It also looks like, I'm listening to you. I am listening. Okay? What does positive communication sound like? When you hear it. So it sounds like getting a clear, direct message. It sounds like drawing attention to what we value, to the types of behaviors that we want to encourage. It sounds like a warm, gentle tone of voice, not a threatening or forceful or frightening tone of voice. What does it feel like to be on the receiving end of positive communication? It feels like being safe, being welcomed, being supported, being noticed, being respected. All the things that we've been talking about in having a safe space. So let's look at some top tips for using positive communication in your clubs. Look at children directly and make eye contact. Making eye contact with somebody makes you feel seen. It makes you feel like this person is actually looking at me, they're engaging with me, they're looking at me in the eye, and they're looking and seeing me as a person. Okay? There's nothing worse than somebody who's talking to you, who's looking up at the ceiling, looking at their fingers, looking at their toes. If you're going to talk to someone, look at them directly and make eye contact. That works for children and adults. People have names. Use their names. Greet them by name. That's how you start using your words in a positive way and communicating positively with the people that you come across, with the children in your clubs. Smile when you talk. Even if you're talking to someone on the phone, you can generally tell if someone's smiling or if they're grumpy when they're talking to you. The children will then also be able to see that you are smiling at them. Okay, it'll come into your eyes, it'll come into your voice. Avoid those negative words that we looked at earlier: can't, don't, won't, shouldn't, etc. Not easy to do, but again, with most of these things, it's all about practice. Keep your body language positive and open. So, for example, open your arms. Let them drop down by your sides rather than walking around with closed or crossed arms. When someone's talking to you, a child, for example, lean in so that you can hear them clearly. Okay? So, open and positive body language is important. Keep your voice warm and gentle. Keep it calm if you can. Use positive hand gestures, thumbs up, high fives, fist pumps. All those types of things are positive gestures that you can do with your hands. And this one is really, really useful for children. Get down to their level. Not only does this allow you to make eye contact with them at the same level they're at, but it also means that they don't have to look up to you, so that they're sort of, it breaks down that power that they might feel that you have over them because you're bigger than them. So if you kneel down or you squat down next to them, you can talk to them eye to eye, and you have broken the power balance between you and them. Have a conversation with a child. This opens up all positive communication. Ask them how they are. Take an interest in their life. How is so-and-so who was sick? And so on. All right? A conversation, a two-way conversation that flows, makes people feel seen and part of something bigger than themselves. So these are top tips that you can start implementing into your clubs. There will be things that you already do, so you can give yourself a tick for that, and there will be things that you think, okay, I can try that out. So in our next learning lab, we are going to dig deeper into the kinds of words that we use in the clubs, and specifically when we are trying to give children praise, because there's a specific way that we can praise children, especially if we want them to develop a growth mindset. So in the next lab, we are continuing this idea of communication, and we're going to focus very much more on the words that we use. That is the end of this learning lab. I will see you next time.